Hello and welcome to the Metaverse Insider's interview series. My name is Josh and thank you for joining us today. In today's episode, we interview Duncan Roberts, thought leader and futurist at Cognizant Research. Hello, Duncan. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
So, we are the Metaverse Insider and would love to hear what you have to say about Cognizant today. So, can you give a brief introduction to yourself and what you do at Cognizant, please?
Sure. So my name's Duncan Roberts. I work for Cognizant, and we are about 330,000 strong technology services and consulting company. And specifically within Cognizant, I work for a department called Cognizant Research. And what we do is we research, write about, present about lots of different emerging technologies, socio-economic trends, and how they will impact our clients and our business.
Brilliant. It's very interesting. So within this research aspect, is there an emphasis on transitioning companies into a Web3 space?
So I don't think right now it's about completely transitioning. I think a lot of it is about education. What is Web3? For our clients, some of our clients come to us asking, what's your opinion on Web3? What do you think it is, and what do you think we should do? Others, we are proactively going out there and saying, do you want to have a session on this? Do you want to understand it? We think there's some interesting use cases. But the first step is always kind of like an education and looking at what it means for that particular client, because it can mean a different thing to everybody.
Absolutely. So it sounds like you guys are effectively enablers for this next level in the technological industry. So concerning that again, you work in many different industries. What would you say are the most significant industries that you're currently working with?
So from a metaverse point of view, we have had interest across the board. You would probably expect to see kind of like the most interest in a kind of a retail and consumer goods space, potentially media and entertainment. And sure, we see a lot of interest there. There's a lot of work that's going on, but Cognizant works with many industries, and you see it in a kind of a manufacturing, the automobile kind of the automotive industry, healthcare. It really is kind of like everybody and anybody is interested and wants to see where they come from. But at the same time, you have to tailor your message. If you're speaking to a banking and financial services client, the message you're giving about Metaverse and Web3 is probably different from a retail and consumer goods. So I wouldn't argue that anybody is necessarily leading the charge at the moment. I would argue that everybody's got an interest, and that the message needs to be kind of tailored to that interest.
Absolutely. But from your perspective, are there any that you are particularly more interested in than others?
So maybe actually, for personally, if we're looking at the metaverse, I enjoy speaking to everybody. One of the things that I'm interested in right now is coming up with those use cases that are not as literal as some use cases out there that we often see. So if you're working with a banking and financial services client, for example, or a telecommunications client, then we don't want to be talking about just literally taking their kind of business and porting it into the metaverse, creating a bank in the metaverse, or something of some such, doing communications in the metaverse. We have to think outside the box and think of them as enablers to these different virtual worlds and the interoperability that needs to be there, and kind of seeing them and how the infrastructure is built around these kind of things, rather than just kind of like a marketing exercise. What are their strengths, and how do their strengths play to the metaverse, and really kind of needling into that. So I'd say that my favorite clients to work with at the moment are those where the use cases aren't immediately obvious.
Yeah, so it's more like a B2B as opposed to a B2C currently.
Yeah.
So from a strategic perspective, how would you say that you're positioning yourself for a fully fledged metaverse?
For a fully fledged metaverse, well, one of the things that I say to clients straight off the bat, because it's again, it's about education, is the metaverse doesn't exist. There is no such thing today as the metaverse. And how are we kind of strategically planning for that? Well, we talk to our clients about, if there's no such thing as the metaverse, and if you go out and speak to different clients, you'll be having different conversations. If you go out and speak to different people about what the metaverse is, you'll get a different definition. How on earth can we kind of strategically plan for something that we can't really define very well? So we work with a definition that kind of looks at what things might be in the future, like, you know, fully interoperable virtual worlds. We acknowledge that that doesn't exist right now, and we go back and look at what is enabling that hype around it and what value we can get from it today. So we will then work with our clients to kind of look at their use cases and say, well, how can you use these technologies, these concepts that are driving the interest around the metaverse and their convergence to get value right now, while remaining kind of nimble and agile enough to transition and move as this kind of space changes. In the time that I've had client engagements and speaking to clients, things change so quickly. You have to be able to pivot on a dime. So building in that agility to whatever we work with, to however we work with clients, is crucial.
No, I very much understand that. It's a very interesting perspective to come from. I don't think many people truly know, as you said, what the metaverse is. There's so many different ideas for what this concept actually is.
Yeah.
There's been definitions from people saying, oh, it's a capital M to a lowercase m, meaning different things, but who knows at this point?
Yeah, and I think that if somebody comes out and says this is what the metaverse is, then you have to be slightly wary of that. One of the most important things when we're speaking to people is acknowledging the situation with the metaverse, and the fact that it's a term from a novel. It's everybody's got their different ideas about it, which were all great. Nobody's wrong, nobody's right. So let's acknowledge that situation and then start to work with it, rather than kind of go, well, this is what it is and this is what we must do.
That's the thing, Duncan. That's the whole point of having conversations like this, so you can just map general ideologies of what it's going to be or what it could be, because it's impossible to state for certain exactly what it will be.
Yeah.
So are there any particular technologies or companies that you're investing in directly to try and make this more of a I don't know, just to bring this more to the front of the public eye?
So in terms of technology, so we kind of look at this from a technology enablers perspective. So what are the technologies that are driving the interest around the metaverse? It's AR and VR and spatial computing, the ability to kind of interact naturally with technology for the first time in a kind of a spatial sense. There's Web3 obviously, and everything around decentralization, which is often conflated with the metaverse but isn't the same thing. And then the other side, from a technological side, is things like 5G, Wi-Fi 6, all of that infrastructure that we need to build out, cloud and edge computing, making sure that the infrastructure is there to support these virtual worlds. So those are the areas technologically which we are kind of focusing on. But there's so many more to them that then kind of are brought in by those core pillars. So there's, of course, artificial intelligence, generative AI. There's IoT that produces all that data that you can use to create digital twins in AR and VR, and is kind of transported around through 5G and Wi-Fi 6 and such. So if you look at things from a kind of a pillar perspective, that's where we're focusing on and kind of branching out from there. But as important as the technologies, we see that these kind of concepts that are driving the use of the technology, because if you're just implementing a technology for technology's sake, then it's often difficult to find success straight away. So what we try and do is kind of acknowledge that these things are here to solve business problems and create business opportunities, and that the technologies can help with that, but also kind of conceptual ideas around making sure you're building within an ecosystem. Interoperability for me isn't just about interoperability between metaverse platforms. It's about interoperability between your existing ecosystem as a business. Then social interaction, making sure these things are about people. It's about human kind of centered design and bringing people together, and also gamification, using game engines to create content, making sure concepts from gaming are used to kind of drive value. So it's pretty broad, but it's the final thing I'll say on that is, rather than investing in one of them and kind of pursuing one of them as the aspect that Cognizant thinks is going to be the winner in the metaverse, there's no such thing. Again, it's about how those things come together to create experiences. So how can we build and scale by bringing in those ideas to our use cases?
Absolutely. I totally agree with you there. But fundamentally, the technology like cloud, high performance cloud-based computing and all that kind of thing, it's just necessary for the metaverse to actually go ahead. The computing power that we currently have just doesn't have the capacity for what we intend it to eventually be. So it's interesting to see, almost like a pyramid, as you sell like an ecosystem, how it would work in that regards, how you build it up in that respect. Because I find there are certain companies that come up with their concept prior to having the technology to back it, and then how can you say what something's going to be without having the background for it? So it's very interesting to see that from that perspective.
I mean, precisely, that's an old adage in kind of business consulting and just working in technology. You need to be solving problems. You need to be looking at what value it's bringing, and the metaverse is exactly the same. So if you're just kind of going, right, guys, we need to do something in the metaverse, it's always going to end up as a gimmick. It's always going to end up as a gimmick. But if you going, right, okay, we have this opportunity to reach a new demographic of customer, or give an amazing employee experience and improve our staff retention, or visualize and operationalize and make more resilient our operations, and then use the metaverse and its associated kind of things to solve those problems, then you're going about it the right way. And that's from an enterprise perspective, that's how we look at it, and that's how we think you're going to see value and make a success of it.
Absolutely, it's definitely the right way to go forwards. So concerning this whole ecosystem and the amount of industries that are in the umbrella term of what some people would consider to be the metaverse, what would your perspective be on the whole decentralization aspect of it? Because obviously people only kind of tend to think of that within like the social aspect of the metaverse and the gaming sense, but how does that then expand into the other industries that you're in collaboration with?
So decentralization is it's an interesting one. So decentralization doesn't necessarily automatically mean kind of blockchain and crypto, but blockchain and crypto by its nature is decentralized. So it's kind of like an unequal relationship. Again, I would say, go back to the use case. Look at the advantages that Web3 technologies and decentralization concepts can give you. So those might be around trust, they might be about resilience, or it might be about creating a new experience for a customer through kind of gated experiences and creating a community off the back of that. But again, if you're going, let's use NFTs to do something, I don't know what, then you're bashing a square peg into a round hole. If you are saying, this is what we want to achieve, and we think we can use NFTs to do it, then that's a really good way to do it. But decentralization and Web3 kind of tools and technologies and concepts and processes could be used for so many different things, and it's already out there being used. One of the main ones is around kind of supply chain provenance and making sure that your supply chains are open to partners and trustworthy, and can be interrogated. But if you want to kind of take that into a metaverse sense, you can apply those things like AR and VR to it to kind of visualize that supply chain for consumers. And you can start to scale it from there. So I would always encourage, when speaking to clients and when clients are thinking about these things, to consider decentralization always as an option, and Web3 technologies, but make sure that they're serving a purpose, as always.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's a quite attractive term to many individuals, and they almost do it almost for the sake of it, not necessarily for the right reasons.
Yeah, and there's no harm in kind of like a test and learn approach. But I feel like we need to be doing testing and learning. But if you're just testing and learning for the sake of testing and learning, then where are you trying to get to? So let's give ourselves an objective in mind, either solving a problem or expanding on an opportunity or reaching a new demographic or whatever that opportunity or problem might be, and then test and learn towards that. Give yourselves a path. And that speaks to something that I'm also quite interested in, which is, how do we evangelize for the metaverse in the current kind of climate? Right. So the climate of cost of living crisis, recession, it seems like a bit of a luxury to be talking about, going into these virtual worlds and hanging out with your mates and trading digital art and doing all these kind of things. But if we can, as I've mentioned, use the metaverse as a tool to try and help advance these problems. And if we look at the problems that we're facing in this current kind of climate, then the metaverse can be used as a tool to help out with those.
Absolutely. I can definitely see why it's seen as a solution for many of the problems that we're currently facing. And I'm sure that eventually it will turn into something marvelous that can actually do these things. So going back to Cognizant as a company, can we expect many things coming in the next 6 months to a year? And are there any interesting progressions that might be there?
I think from my perspective, yeah, absolutely. Like, we're working with a lot of clients on this at the moment. It's an emerging space. We have to be aware of the fact that it's an emerging space, and plenty of things will come out of the work that we're doing with our clients, but I can't really talk about the details right now.
That's totally understandable. So regarding the metaverse as a whole, what do you envision it to be or expect within the next 5 to 10 years? I know we've just had a whole discussion saying it's hard to come to these ideas, but still, I'm very curious to hear yours, Duncan.
So for me, the metaverse, or whatever that may be, is a method to bring people together and interact in digital ways that is just more natural and more beneficial to us as people. And whether the metaverse is just a suite of platforms and tools that we use to do that, or is this kind of monolithic space where we go to do that, I don't think that really matters. I think what matters is that we constantly look at these technologies and conceptual ideas and how they can work together to bring those new experiences, and start building that now to start generating that value. We can do this today, and people are doing it today. There's loads and loads of great stuff being built out there and being worked with. Let's concentrate on what we are doing now and where it might go in the future, rather than just kind of sitting back and going, well, I think it's going to be over there, and I think it's going to be this monolithic space. So my personal opinion is that it will be more the kind of the suite of platforms and tools that we use in many centralized and decentralized ways.
Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of Cognizant. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for weekly content. See you next time.